How many black flashes has Gojo hit? Well, let's talk about it, but if you're not caught up on the manga, spoilers beware. Alright, so first of all, we know that Gojo's hit more total black flashes than anybody, although Yuji will surpass him in that metric. However, that's not what I'm talking about in this video. Specifically, I'm talking about how many black flashes did Gojo hit in his battle with Sukuna, because that's a bit of a contentious point, so let's get into it. And shout out to Callie and 844 who sent in some sponsored questions about this subject. Y'all pause to read the whole thing if you want, but essentially both of these deal with the general confusion about the amount of black flashes Gojo actually hit in that fight. So we're going to go over each of them. Alright, so by my count, Gojo hit 4 separate black flashes in his fight against Sukuna, leading off with the most impressive one, in my opinion, this one where he literally knocked the man unconscious. Absolute cinema. Now here's where things get a little bit confusing. The second black flash, like Callie mentioned in their comment, is actually right here against Agito. And Gege even commented about this in the volume extras, saying most people didn't even realize that this was a black flash because he didn't emphasize it enough. But as you can see, there are these sparks of black right here. So this was Gojo's second black flash. So it's after this second black flash that Gojo feels the rush of exhilaration and gets his output back and is able to heal his arm. However, the confusion stems from the panel right before this one. And that's because the narrator says a second black flash right after Agito explodes from Gojo's blue, leading a lot of people to believe that this was a black flash, that Gojo's blue black flashed, if you will. But I personally do not believe that. I think the narrator saying a second black flash is in reference to the Agito punch that I showed a few panels back. So I just think this is just a little bit confusing in how it's laid out, because you see the black stuff, it kind of looks like the sparks of black, but I think this is supposed to be blood, not black flash sparks. So could it have been a little less confusing? Sure, but I believe this is in reference to the punch, not the blue, because again, I don't think we've ever seen somebody like black flash with a technique. It's always been like with a strike, if that makes sense. Now, I could be wrong here. This could be a black flash, blue explosion, or whatever you want to call it, but for my money, it's not. So the count is still 2 black flashes: Sukuna punch, Agito punch. And again, just to make sure we're on the same page, Gojo hit his first 2 black flashes, then had this moment. Because Gojo will go on to hit even more black flashes here, but it was after the first 2 that he had his resurgence. So then we have Gojo's third black flash, which comes in the strike against Maharaga here. And then we have Gojo's fourth black flash, which was aimed against Sukuna, but as you can see, Maharaga comes in and protects his son, so it goes against Maharaga once again. So all in all, that was 4 black flashes: the punch against Sukuna, the punch against Agito, and the 2 punches against Maharaga. Meaning the narrator never made a mistake, whether it was in chapter 235 or, 15 chapters later when it was referenced again in Sukuna, because it was indeed after 2 black flashes that Gojo got his RCT back. Alrighty, y'all, we're just going to keep this video rolling because I got some more questions from you guys, starting with this one from Kakibosh, who asks, do I believe Kenjaku will take over Sukuna's body after Yuji defeats him? And y'all feel free to pause to read this whole thing because Kaki gives some more context, but personally, no. I don't think Kenny will take over Sukuna's body just because I don't think that's really been his goal. I think it's been all about the merger, right? He just wants to kind of see what's going to happen with that. I don't think he's had kind of this secret plan of just trying to get Sukuna's body. But that being said, I've even thought that we will see Kenjaku again. Now, whether that means we'll literally see him take over another body, or we'll just see like the ripple effect of things he set into motion that haven't really come to fruition yet, I don't know. I just don't think we've seen the last of the effects of Kenjaku, at least. So how that's going to play out, we'll have to see. But personally, I just don't see it being a twist where he takes over Sukuna's body after Sukuna is defeated. Next up, continuing on the Kenny theories, we've got this one from Sweeze, who says, what if Kenjaku takes over Yuta and by extension Rika? My theory is that there's a secret condition to where Kenny's technique will automatically take over a host as long as the brain is gone, teleporting Kenny's brain into the empty host. So we don't know a ton about Kenjaku's technique, right? There are so many question marks and unknowns with it that I think that paves many paths for Kenjaku to potentially come back. not only due to his body swap technique, but you also got to remember he was the one that originated turning yourself into a cursed object in order to be functionally immortal, in order to switch bodies, right? So Kenjaku has a lot of ways that he could still be around that make sense story-wise, in my opinion. This is one of the reasons I think we maybe haven't seen the last of him, right? So is it possible for him to take over Yuta by some mysterious way the technique works that we aren't familiar with yet? Sure. The thing I'll push back on, though, is the teleporting brain portion, because Kenjaku's brain, the one that was in Geto at least, is no longer there. It was eaten, right? Now, if you're saying Kenjaku has like a true brain that wasn't even in Geto, that is in like a lab somewhere, then maybe that. But, you know, the Geto brain is gone. So at least wouldn't happen that specific way. But I do think it's at least possible that he could take over Yuta. However, if you've seen my previous videos, I would think that maybe if anyone, Gojo has the highest chance of that. But, you know, there's, like I said, just too many unknowns with how these things work. So once these 5 minutes are up with Yuta and Gojo, if he can survive that long, then we may get some more clarity on these things. Next up, Duke has a question about all this same Kenny stuff, so y'all pause to read, but I'm right there with you. I think he has a path to come back. Next up, McReb wants to know what I make of the consistent link between cursed energy nullification and heaven and heavenly, citing examples such as the inverted spear of heaven, which cancels curse techniques, Angel's curse technique, which basically does the same thing, and heavenly restrictions like Toji and Maki, who have no cursed energy whatsoever. And I think that is a really interesting thematic link. Now, you do mention Mekamaru kind of being the exception to that rule, since he too has a heavenly restriction, but he has massive amounts of cursed energy, right? So let's kind of push him to the side for a bit, and I think this could be an intentional thing by Gege. I'm very, very interested in the religious kind of undertones to a lot of things in this series, and obviously Gege drew a ton of inspiration from various religions and mythologies, but beyond that, the kind of in-your-face parallels, especially with Angel, like you mentioned, are not for nothing. And that leads into the whole the fallen thing with Sukuna, which is also very biblical, right? Like the fallen angel. So I think there's more there. I don't know if it's fair to say there's like a direct connection between lack of cursed energy and that being something like literally divine, because it may just be, you know, colloquially what the sorcerers named that effect, you know, because its heavenly restrictions are so similar to a binding vow. It's, you know, a binding vow that was placed on you outside of your control, placed on you by the heavens, as it were. So it's hard to say if that's more just like a cultural way they refer to it, or if there's something deeper there. And I really hope Gege sheds some light on these things before the manga ends, but I could easily see him just never touching on it, and that just being something, you know, we get to speculate about for forever. But I love the connection. I too think there's something there. It's just, we may or may not get answers. And speaking of Angel, we have this question from user who says, why isn't she participating in the fight? You know, the whole plan was for Yuta to copy her technique and use it against Sukuna. Why isn't she using it herself? And this is a good question, but I think it mostly boils down to the fact that she is injured and probably just a liability. Can't hang with the big dogs at this point. We don't exactly know what losing an arm means for her. Like, can she still perform the technique? Probably, but, you know, that definitely handicaps her in some ways. Maybe she can't perform simple domain, which we know that everybody basically in the fight with Sukuna at this point needed a domain defense. So maybe that was why she's not there. Could just be that, you know, she just really cannot provide much at this point. And like you mentioned, with Yuta having copied it and imbuing it in his domain, meaning it's going to be the sure hit, maybe that kind of just defeats the need for her to be there. It's like, Akotsu can do it, like, you're injured anyway, don't worry about it type of thing. But all that considered, I don't think we've seen the last of Angel. I think she will have a role to play before this is all said and done. And like I mentioned in the previous question, I hope we get some more answers about this kind of religious connection with her, but we'll have to see. And then for your second question on why Sukuna isn't using 10 Shadows anymore, I don't think we have enough information to answer this with any level of confidence. Like you mentioned here, could it be because he transformed into his body and so no longer has access to it? Maybe, but I don't love that explanation. So until we get more information for me right now, it's just that he hasn't deemed it necessary. Like maybe in his true body, after having dealt with Gojo, it's like I can just use my technique to deal with you fodder. Next up, we got an interesting one from Skew Hoop who asks, do I think there's a relationship between cursed energy and cancer? And I would say probably not in the way you're describing here, just because the world of JJK is very much similar to our world, the real world, right? With one big exception, that being that there is cursed energy and cursed spirits, right? But, we have cancer in our world, so I would imagine the cancer that exists in the world of JJK is basically the same and, therefore not caused by cursed energy itself. Yes, cursed energy is negative. Cancer, I think we would all agree, is a negative thing, but I don't think cancer would be like caused by cursed energy just because we know that most humans, I mean, like 99%, right, have very low amounts of cursed energy in the world of JJK. So I don't think that would be like a cause of it, but, I do think that cursed energy and negative emotions are obviously going to be produced by the fear of cancer and people dealing with cancer in that world. So I think there could be like a cancer cursed spirit, if you will, and definitely just a lot of pooled cursed energy related to those subjects of things. But I don't think that cursed energy itself causes cancer in the reverse direction, if that makes sense. So cancer causes cursed energy, but not cursed energy causes cancer. And finally today, Nock wants to know, Lord Genome at his weakest versus current Yuji hand to hand, who wins? How difficult would it be? And for those of you that don't know, Lord Genome is from Gurren Lagann, one of my favorite series of all time. Check it out if you haven't. But I will say it's been years since I watched this. So, y'all push back against me in the comments if you need to. But the scaling in Gurren Lagann is just insane, okay? And I know you said at his weakest pre-time skip and hand-to-hand, so he's not going to have his mech or anything. But I still think I got to hand it to him just because, again, the scaling, what people are capable of in that in that universe is insane, and this man is no slouch, okay? Lord Genome, let's not forget. So I think I gotta give it to him, but again, push back against me if the weakest version of him maybe couldn't stand up to Yuji, but from what I recall, he's got insane stats like super strength, durability, he can heal himself, so he's gonna be a problem even without that mech, even at his weakest pre-time skip. And this version of Yuji's still without a domain. I just don't think he has enough to get it done. But let me know y'all's thoughts. Anyways, y'all, that's going to do it for this one. Special shout out to everybody who sent in support. Thank you guys so much. We've still got some lobotomy Kaisen to go. I've got some more question videos lined up, so don't worry. We're going to have some content. We can make it through this final stretch. But as always, thank you guys so much for watching.